The night the truth snapped, Maya Reed sorted envelopes striped with red while rain beat the window. She said, "They are all final notices," and her hands shook like loose keys. The bank app flashed zeros where savings once lived. Evan Cole had vanished and left every loan in her name. She said, "You promised you'd fix it," to a dead phone and a humming fridge. Headlights scraped across peeling paint, and a tow truck hooked her car. The landlord muttered about arrears and walked away. She said, "You don't get to run," as a photo of Cabo's smiles slid from the fridge magnet. Sirens bled into the block and the power flickered. She said, "Evan, I will find you," and recorded the words to his voicemail. The message ended, and something colder began. Morning brought no mercy, only gray light and the smell of damp paper. Maya said, "I have to list what he touched," and spread statements like crime scene tags. Debt collectors left voicemails, with voices that practiced sympathy. She said, "You will be paid, just not by me," and flagged each account with a note. The neighbor's TV leaked game shows that pretended nothing was broken. She said, "He used my signature like a spare key, and traced forged loops with a pen tip." Coffee went cold, and the silence turned heavy. She said, "Find the first lie, find the map," and opened a folder labeled Cole Consulting. The folder was empty, except for a receipt with a coastal address. She said, "You left a breadcrumb, Evan," and circled it hard. The coastal address resolved into a tagged photo on a public feed, and the caption burned. Maya said, "Rooftop at Halcyon Pier," and the skyline sun glittered like teeth. Evan laughed in a video, clinking glasses with strangers who loved the story he sold them. He said, "To clean slates," and the crowd cheered at the lie. Maya said, "You toast with what you stole," and saved each frame for later. A watch on his wrist matched a charge on her card. "And," she said, "got you," and noted the timestamp like a time bomb. Wind rattled her window, and the clip looped. She said, "Keep smiling, Evan. It photographs well." When the anger cooled, the cost crawled in and sat with her. Maya said, "I signed nothing," but the ink on copies argued back. The apartment felt smaller, as if the walls had learned to lean. She said, "I won't drown in his mess," and boxed her keepsakes with ruthless hands. A cracked photo frame surrendered glass like thin ice. She said, "No more souvenirs," and wrapped the picture in brown paper. Outside, a siren smeared across the street like a warning. She said, "Debt is a leash," and cut old passwords from a notebook. The knot in her chest cinched, then loosened into resolve. She pinned a fresh page on the wall and drew lines like highways to a reckoning. Maya said, "Halcyon Pier," watch, accounts, contacts, and the map grew muscles. Names budded like thorns, and she threaded red string through every point. She said, "You built a paper kingdom," and marked the weak walls. The tow receipt, the rooftop tag, the ghost company, each detail clicked like a round chambering. She said, "I will make you pay in your own currency," and wrote a deadline at the top. The storm outside thinned, and the room found its edges. She said, "This is where you fall," and capped the pen. The phone rang again, another collector, his tone rehearsed, his words clipped. Maya said, "You'll get your money, but not from me," and slammed the call down. The apartment felt like it was shrinking as voices stacked in her voicemail. A knock at the door froze her spine, and she pressed an eye to the peephole. A stranger in a suit held a folder, his car idling below. She said, "He's sending them like wolves," and refused to open. The stranger slid an envelope under the door, the paper hissing on wood. Maya crouched, fingers hovering, then snatched it fast. The letter threatened seizure of her remaining assets, even the apartment itself. She said, "He signed me up for this funeral," and ripped the envelope in half. Cold determination set in, as rain tapped its metronome on the sill. When the knocking stopped, another sound came, one familiar enough to sting. A voice through the door said, "Maya, it's Lucas," and her hand trembled. She opened the lock slowly, letting him in. Lucas Hayes, the only one who hadn't left, stood damp from rain, carrying the same nervous half-smile she remembered. He said, "You look like hell," and set down a bag of takeout. Maya laughed once, sharp as glass. She said, "You knew about him, didn't you?" And his silence was louder than denial. He said, "I warned you, but you didn't want to hear it," and guilt shadowed his face. She stared at the food untouched. She said, "I don't need sympathy. I need someone who won't flinch." He stayed, shoulders heavy, caught between friendship and fear. Lucas's presence dragged her back to memories she wished were still warm. She said, "We had barbecues once, before Evan turned life into receipts," and looked at him with something brittle. He said we were younger and dumber, and dropped into the chair across from her. The silence thickened, filled with ghosts of better days. A photo album sat on the shelf, its spine cracked from years, and she refused to touch it. Lucas said, "You loved him too much to see it." And his voice carried no cruelty, only exhaustion. She said, "Love doesn't forge contracts," and slammed a folder shut. Outside, kids shouted under umbrellas, their joy mocking her collapse. She whispered, "I'll burn what he built," and Lucas flinched, recognizing the edge sharpening in her. Elsewhere, Evan Cole toasted with partners who believed every lie. He said to new ventures, and wine sparkled in crystal. The penthouse balcony stretched above the city like a throne. Evan's grin glimmered under expensive lights while his watch reflected every stolen dollar. A woman asked, "What about the fallout?" And he laughed, dismissing her with charm. He said, "No one traces smoke once the fire's out," and raised his glass higher. The room filled with claps and shallow cheers. He looked out across the skyline, his reflection towering in glass walls. Evan whispered to himself, "She'll break before I do," with smug certainty. The city lights blinked back, cold and uncaring. Back in her apartment, Maya stared at the news clipping pinned above the map. A story about another victim. A man ruined by Evan's company, his photo grim. She said, "You weren't the first casualty," and her chest tightened. The man had lost his house, his family scattered. Maya whispered, "He is why I can't stop," and pinned the article alongside her evidence. Lucas hovered near the door, conflicted. He said, "Revenge doesn't rebuild," but she didn't flinch. She said, "It might not rebuild, but it evens the ground," and her eyes shone with fire. The storm outside slowed to a drizzle, and silence carved itself into the room. Maya followed the address scribbled on the receipt, the alley damp and stinking of smoke. A flicker of light spilled from a workshop door, half hidden behind crates. Inside stood Daniel Cross, a man she once heard whispers about. His scarred hands worked metal into sparks, his posture steady as if the world could not move him. She said, "You knew Evan," and the hammer froze mid-swing. Daniel looked up, eyes shadowed with history. He said, "Knew him, followed him, paid for it." The truth carried weight heavier than steel. Maya stepped inside, and the storm outside rattled the door like applause. Daniel set the hammer down, his hands steady, but eyes distant. He said, "He took everything I built and left me a husk." Maya studied his scars, the truth etched deeper than words. She said, "He left me with debts he never meant to pay," and her voice cracked. Daniel poured 2 cups of stale coffee, sliding one across. He said, "You want revenge, but revenge doesn't restore. It carves deeper holes." Maya pushed the cup aside. She said, "I don't want to restore, I want to end him." Daniel sighed, the sound of a man who had already lost. Daniel leaned closer, his voice heavy. He said, "I once hunted him too, but it consumed me until there was nothing left." Maya clenched her fists, nails carving crescents in her palms. She said, "So you gave up," her words sharp, meant to wound. Daniel didn't flinch, only looked at her as if she were a reflection of his past. He said, "I walked away before it burned me alive." Maya rose, pacing the shop, eyes lit by sparks. She said, "Then watch me burn brighter," and pinned her map to his wall. Daniel shook his head, muttering, "Hell drag you under." Lucas entered the workshop, dripping from rain, suspicion carved into his features. He said, "So this is your guide?" His voice echoed. Maya said, "This is someone who knows what Evan is." Daniel looked between them, unimpressed. He said, "And you must be the friend torn between fear and loyalty." Lucas shot back, "I'm the one trying to keep her human." Maya slammed her hand against the table. She said, "I don't need saving." Daniel's lips curved in a ghost of pity. He said, "Neither did I once." The storm outside howled, carrying truth with it. Daniel finally broke the silence, his voice like steel dragged over stone. He said, "If you insist on walking this path, you need more than rage. You need precision." He opened a drawer and revealed a file thick with notes, receipts, and photos. Maya's breath caught at the faces inside, all connected to Evan. She said, "You kept it all," her voice trembling between awe and fury. Daniel nodded. He said, "Because someday, someone like you would arrive." Lucas shook his head in disbelief. He said, "You're feeding the fire." Maya grabbed the file, eyes alight. She said, "No, he just gave me fuel." Maya spread Daniel's file across her wall, the threads forming a net of names, places, and dates. She said, "Every lie leaves a trail," and marked a circle around a warehouse Evan used. Lucas shook his head, pacing the floor. He said, "You're turning this into war." Daniel leaned on the workbench, watching in silence. He said, "War is already here. She's just drawing a map." Maya pulled a knife from the drawer, stabbing it into the paper. She said, "Then I'll be the one to end it." Rain hit the roof like drums, echoing her vow. The warehouse loomed at midnight, rusted doors chained, graffiti covering its bones. Maya whispered, "This is where he hides the money." Lucas muttered, "This is madness," but followed anyway. Daniel kept to the shadows, eyes sharp, body tense. Maya cut the chain with bolt cutters, the clank echoing through the night. She said, "Every empire has cracks." Inside, dust and silence swallowed them, broken only by dripping water. Lucas hissed, "If we get caught," but Maya silenced him with a stare. She said, "Then we know we're close." Her footsteps echoed, steady and fearless. Inside the warehouse, a shadow moved, heavy boots crunching glass. The enforcer stepped into the light, broad shoulders filling the space. He said, "You should have stayed out of this." Maya squared her stance. She said, "Tell Evan his ghosts are catching up." Lucas whispered, "We need to go," but his words dissolved in the tension. Daniel lifted a pipe from the floor, eyes locked on the enforcer. The man smirked, stepping closer, chains rattling at his side. He said, "You're in over your head." Maya smiled coldly. She said, "So drown me." The air cracked with violence about to break. The fight erupted like thunder. The enforcer swung the chain, sparks flying as it struck metal beams. Daniel blocked with the pipe, his arms trembling under force. Lucas grabbed Maya's arm, hissing, "We can't win this," but she pulled free. She said, "I'm not leaving." She lunged, slashing the chain loose with a cutter blade, metal clattering to the floor. The enforcer growled, grabbing her jacket, but she drove her knee hard into his chest. Daniel struck again, the sound of steel on bone echoing. The man staggered, blood darkening his jaw. Maya whispered, "Tell him I'm coming." The enforcer crashed to the ground, coughing blood, his smirk gone. Daniel stood above him, breathing ragged, pipe slick in his hand. Lucas muttered, "We should run," but his eyes held reluctant respect. Maya crouched over the fallen man, gripping his collar. She said, "Where's Evan's next move?" The enforcer spat red onto the concrete, refusing. She pressed harder, eyes like ice. He choked, then laughed weakly. He said, "He already knows you're hunting." Maya let him drop, her decision clear. She said, "Then let him wait for me." Thunder split the sky as she walked out, unshaken. Evan raised his glass inside a sleek boardroom, his voice cutting smooth as velvet. He said, "The future belongs to us, and his partners applauded blindly. Behind the applause, unease flickered in their eyes. A woman whispered, "What about those rumors?" Evans smirked, dismissing her with ease. He said, "She's nothing, a ghost chasing shadows." He leaned forward, charm masking the rot underneath. His phone buzzed with a blocked call, and for a second his mask cracked. He silenced it, forcing the smile back. The storm outside rumbled, a reminder he couldn't escape forever. Maya flipped through Daniel's files again, eyes catching on financial trails. She said he buried it under shell companies and drew circles tighter. Lucas frowned, shaking his head. He said, "You're chasing ghosts in paper." She slammed her palm on the table. She said, "This isn't paper, it's blood." Daniel placed a hand on the file, his voice calm but firm. He said, "Every move needs patience, not rage." Maya pulled the file away, her eyes locked. She said, "Patience won't scare him, but fire will." The lamp flickered, shadows stretching like claws across the wall. The enforcer sat alone in a diner booth, bandaged jaw, his loyalty unraveling. He stirred cold coffee, eyes haunted. He said softly, "How much longer can I bleed for him?" His phone buzzed with Evan's name, and he stared without answering. A waitress asked, "Refill?" He nodded absently, not tasting a drop. The neon lights above flickered, red and blue bleeding across his face. He clenched his fist, remembering Maya's words echoing in his skull. He muttered, "Tell him I'm coming," and felt doubt slip deeper into his bones. The world outside looked less like loyalty, more like prison. Daniel confronted Maya near the evidence wall, his voice sharp. He said, "I've watched revenge turn people hollow." She shot back, "Then let me be hollow as long as he falls." Lucas cut in, voice shaking. He said, "This isn't justice, it's obsession." Maya slammed a photo of Evan onto the wall, red string snapping tight. She said, "It's survival." Daniel's shoulders sagged, regret carved into his face. He said, "I can guide you, but I can't save you." Silence pressed against them, broken only by rain at the window. Maya whispered, "Then don't save me, just stand aside." Maya worked through the night, weaving every clue into a plan. She said, "He'll never see it coming," as she marked a bold red X across Evan's office location. Lucas leaned against the doorway, his face pale. He said, "Once you cross this line, you don't come back." She didn't look up. She said, "I never plan to." Daniel lingered in the shadows, silent witness to her descent. The storm outside eased into a steady drizzle, as if the city itself was holding its breath. Maya whispered, "Tomorrow, the empire cracks," and set the pen down with finality. Maya crouched in the shadows outside Evan's glass tower, rain sliding down her hood like silver threads. She whispered, "Tonight the cracks widen," her voice low but steady. Lucas hugged his jacket tight, eyes darting at every camera. He said, "This is suicide, Maya. No one walks out of a place like this alive." Daniel scanned the street, shoulders squared like a soldier who'd fought too many wars. He said, "He's protected, cameras on every angle, guards posted like wolves." Maya pulled a device from her coat, its glow sharp against the dark. She said, "I studied his blind spots, I mapped every weakness." Generators hummed, thunder growled, and the pavement mirrored their reflections like fractured ghosts. She pressed her palm to the slick glass, watching her face split into fragments. She said, "We break him where he feels untouchable," and the sky cracked white with lightning. They slipped through a service door, the tower swallowing them in steel silence. Maya whispered, "Every empire forgets its foundations," her boots echoing on polished floors. Lucas muttered, "We shouldn't be here," fear bleeding into his voice, his hands trembling. Daniel moved like a shadow, steadying Maya with one calloused hand. He said, "Noise is your enemy. Breathe slower, think sharper." Security lights pulsed above them, each blink throwing their shadows long across the walls. Ahead loomed a door plated in brass, Evan's name etched into it like a crown. Maya's lips curled in a bitter smirk. She said, "Gold letters on a rotten door." The device whirred in her hands, blue sparks licking at the lock. Lucas squeezed his eyes shut, bracing for alarms that didn't come yet. The hum of the city outside felt like a countdown they couldn't stop. The lock clicked, the door swinging open into a chamber of ghosts. On the walls hung photographs, faces of victims, contracts, debts, each pinned like hunting trophies. In the center, a file bore Maya's name in black ink, her life dissected. She froze, her breath cutting short. She said, "He kept everything, every scar he left." Lucas whispered, voice trembling, "It's a shrine to his lies, a museum of ruin." Daniel's jaw tightened, eyes narrowing at the collection. He said, "He wanted you to find this, to see yourself on his wall." Maya ripped her file free, her fists white around the paper. She said, "Then I'll make this his obituary." Lightning slashed outside, and in its flare, Evan's portrait sneered from the wall. His smug face seemed to watch them all, mocking, untouchable. A shriek tore the silence, alarms blaring, lights pulsing crimson. Red shadows painted the office like fire. Heavy boots echoed, and the enforcer stormed in, bruised but unbroken, chain coiled at his side. He growled, "You never learn, do you?" Maya's grip tightened on her blade. She said, "Neither do you." Lucas hissed, "We're trapped, Maya, no way out." His panic clawed the edges of the room. Daniel stepped forward, pipe in hand, voice steady like stone. He said, "Then we fight him here in Evan's own temple." The enforcer swung his chain, sparks exploding against steel beams. Maya lunged, steel flashing in alarm light. The room shook with the violence, alarms screaming in rhythm with each blow. The fight ended in chaos. Evan's desk splintered under the enforcer's body. Blood smeared contracts, the ink running red. He groaned, still laughing, defiance, even in ruin. Maya pressed her blade to his throat, her eyes ice. She said, "Where is he?" The enforcer coughed, his voice raw. He spat blood and smiled with broken teeth. He said, "He's been watching all along." A monitor on the wall flickered alive, Evan's face filling the screen. He smirked, calm as if nothing had touched him. He said, "Welcome to my office, Maya, you finally made it." Lucas staggered back, whispering, "He knew, he's been waiting." Daniel's stare hardened, scars lit by the monitor glow. Maya leaned closer, voice sharp as steel. She said, "Then let him watch me destroy him." The enforcer lay broken on the floor, monitors flickering with Evan's grin. Maya rose, blood spattered on her jacket, her chest heaving but eyes steady. Lucas whispered, "You survived, but at what cost?" His words trembled in the alarm's echo. Daniel dragged a chair upright, breathing hard, his scars etched deeper in red light. He said, "This isn't the end, it's the beginning." Maya stared at Evan's frozen image, voice like glass shattering. She said, "He built his empire on people like me, and now I'll pull it stone by stone." Thunder cracked outside, and for the first time, Evan's face on the monitor flickered with unease. Lucas paced the shattered office, voice sharp. He said, "We've crossed too many lines, Maya. This isn't justice anymore." Maya turned, her stare cold enough to silence him. She said, "Justice was gone the moment he signed my name to his lies." Daniel sank into the chair, his breath slow, his tone weary. He said, "Both of you are right. Revenge always costs more than you think." Lucas's fists clenched. He said, "She's not the same, she's drowning." Maya stepped closer, fire burning behind her words. She said, "Then let me drown, but let him drown with me." The alarms finally silenced, leaving a crushing stillness. Daniel pushed himself up, walking toward Maya with heavy steps. He said, "I've lived your road, and it ends in ashes." She met his gaze, unblinking. She said, "Then I'll walk it further than you ever dared." Lucas's voice cracked, pleading now. He said, "Maya, stop before you become him." Daniel's shoulders sagged, regret in every line of his face. He said, "She already has fire in her eyes I once carried." Maya turned to the board, her voice a whisper and a vow. She said, "Evan doesn't get to win, not while I breathe." Her words hung in the air like a blade. The monitor buzzed, Evan's live image appearing, leaning in his chair somewhere far away. He said, "Bravo, Maya. You've come this far, but you'll never touch me." Maya stepped closer, her shadow stretching across the flickering screen. She said, "I don't need to touch you to tear you down." Lucas muttered, "He's still in control, can't you see?" Daniel's jaw locked. He said, "Control doesn't last forever, not when people see the truth." Evan laughed, hollow in shock. He said, "The truth never mattered, only power." Maya slammed her palm against the screen. She said, "Then I'll show the world what your power costs." The storm outside calmed, rain whispering on glass like an ending breath. Maya picked up Evan's framed portrait, shards crunching under her boots. She said, "This is where you fall," her words steady and final. Lucas turned away, unable to watch, his voice trembling. He said, "There's no coming back from this." Daniel's eyes softened, but he didn't move to stop her. He whispered, "Sometimes the fire consumes everything. Sometimes it clears the field." Maya hurled the portrait to the floor, glass shattering like thunder. She walked toward the door, her silhouette sharp against the fading red glow. The silence afterward was heavier than any scream.